Hi everyone, welcome to Tech at Work Online. My name is Nell Carpenter and I'm the Youth Program Manager at Vermont Works for Women. And we're joined today by Carolina Lukac, who I happen to know through previous work. So I'm really happy to have her on today. So Vermont Works for Women is a nonprofit. We're based in Winooski, Vermont. We help women, girls, and gender nonconforming individuals recognize their potential and explore, pursue, and excel in work that leads to economic independence. So on the youth side of things, that looks like a lot of different types of programming, like career exploration events, summer camps, after school programs, kind of anything really to help people explore all of their options and build up some confidence in pursuing them. So Tech at Work is one of those. We typically run this program directly in career and tech centers around the state, but we're excited to be online so that we can spread to a wider audience. So Tech at Work is a gender diverse speaker series that introduces students to diverse role models in various career fields. And we just chat with folks who are in a variety of career fields about how they got there, learn a little bit about why they're passionate about that, and give some advice to young people who might want to pursue careers in a similar field. So again, we're joined today by Carolina. Carolina works in a sector of agriculture and natural resources, which is a program in a lot of tech centers. And so we're excited that she's joining us. So thank you, Carolina, for logging on today and chatting a bit with me. If you could just introduce yourself a little bit more, where you work, your job title, how long you've been at this position.
Sure. So I work with a nonprofit organization based here in Burlington. The organization is called the Vermont Community Garden Network. And my role within the organization is titled Garden Education Manager. And I tend to keep track of my years in the organization by seasons, by growing seasons. And this is my 6th growing season with VCGN. Is the shortened name of the organization that you might hear me say.
Got it. That's great. So could you just tell us a little bit about how you got here? So obviously you've been with VCGN for a bit now, but could you just tell us a little bit about what pathway you took that landed you in this current position?
Yeah, I'll go way, way, way back.
Right.
I would say to college. And maybe even a little bit before. I was born and raised in Mexico, spent my whole life till I was 18 there in Mexico City, biggest city in this part of the world. I went to college in New York at Vassar College, and for 2 years I was an art history major. I went to that college because they had a great art history program. I was thrilled. I wanted to study art. I'm not an artist, but I enjoy art. I was very disillusioned. Did not make good friends. My professors were not friendly. I eventually took a year sabbatical leave from college, and I was dating someone who lived in Costa Rica. And so we went there and started working on a farm. And that, I would say, was the changing point when I felt like, I don't want to study art history. That doesn't interest me. I enjoy working on farms and learning about growing food.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going back to college, changing my major to environmental studies. And I would say in any summer experience and kind of academic internship opportunity that I had, I dove into the environmental education world and into the growing food, whether it was at a farm, with a nonprofit, with children, with adults. And so when I ended college, I really wanted to go into environmental education and teach people about the wonderful world that we live in. I ended up soon thereafter going back to Mexico and lived there for 10 years, doing multiple different jobs, I would say in environmental education, and focused on teaching people how to grow food. It was extremely exciting because there were definitely not many people doing that at the time in Mexico City. And if I fast forward, there came a time in my personal life when I wanted to breathe cleaner air and be closer to my partner and start a family. And so I moved up to Vermont, that is a really rich climate and landscape for the agriculture world that I'm interested in. I saw the job listing, few job listings caught my attention, and I saw this current job listing and said, this was still when I was living in Mexico, and said, that's me. I mean, that's me. The description was me. It was perfect. And it happened to be in Vermont where I wanted to move. So that's how I landed this job. I applied, did the usual interviews, and was very fortunate in getting the job. And 6 years later, I'm here.
Yeah. Wow, that's so fun to hear. I feel like I knew bits and pieces of that story, but not the whole thing. As someone who knows, and I'll just kind of brag about you. So Carolina not only has knowledge about growing food, but also herbs and the medicinal qualities of herbs and cooking and teas and tinctures and things like that. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to how you gained that knowledge along the way, given that maybe your first couple of years of college were focused around art. And then I also study environmental studies, and there's no like how to grow everything and how to do something with everything. So I'm wondering if you could speak to how like, just kind of how you came into such a wide breadth of knowledge.
Yeah, I would say I've always been really interested in learning, and have searched out those opportunities to take apprenticeships, to take week-long workshops, to take a month off of my life and go somewhere and take a workshop. And I've searched out those opportunities. I feel especially in this more untraditional field, it wasn't formally part of my career at college, but there's so many opportunities to get certificates or to participate in a sort of diploma program. So I did a lot of that. I did a training in permaculture, lots of training in like agroecology world, an herbalism year-long apprenticeship. So there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of gaining knowledge. So I've done, I would say, several kind of like receiving that diploma, that certificate from different courses, and teaching myself. When I lived in Mexico, there wasn't anyone doing these things. I'll give the example of like kombucha and making sauerkraut, which for me are passions of mine. There was nobody in Mexico doing that. So I started to do it. And then friends and other people said, oh, Carolina, teach me how. Right. And I think that's how it evolved to like, oh, I know skills that people are interested in knowing. How can I teach them?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a really great kind of thing to talk about. And I'm glad you touched upon that. It's just kind of the like non-traditional avenues of knowledge, and people can be so focused on like your 4-year degree or whatever. And there's so many other ways, like you mentioned, apprenticeships, different training programs, YouTube videos. We had someone just kind of plug, like, look it up on YouTube and figure out how to do it. And then being able to kind of become a teacher yourself. So that's great. I'm wondering if you could talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and maybe split it up into like growing season and non-growing season, since in Vermont, I imagine being in the field of growing food, there's got to be a balance, because you can't do a ton in February, or can you?
Yeah, for sure. So my days vary enormously seasonally. So I'll start by this summertime that we're in right now. I've been spending a lot of time in other people's gardens. So I've been running education, garden-based education programming. Yesterday, I'll give the example of yesterday. I started the day out at the family room garden, and I work along with an intern who is learning about running garden-based education. And it gives us a chance to be outside in the garden, fresh air, socially distant gardening activities, and being able to work with both adults and children. And that's something that I've enjoyed, and that I've been fortunate to find that. I at some point thought about, oh, do I want to work just with children? And I don't have that much energy. Do I want to work just with adults? Adults get boring sometimes. And so any opportunity that I have to work with mixed age groups, I enjoy. And so that's how yesterday started. I got dirty. I was in heat. My hands were in soil. I was having many conversations with people. I was taking photos with my phone to take notes, because I have to record all these things and post on social media. So lots of things happening, but my hands are in the soil most of that morning. And daytime when it's hot, and right now I have to be home while my son naps, I do computer work. I send emails, I coordinate several people who are working with us. I record how many people attended activities. I make a lot of to-do lists. I'm kind of, as a manager for a team of people, I need to keep everyone on track. And so I do a lot of computer work. And then in the evening, I went out to affordable housing sites where we are running support for gardeners. And so it was an hour-long visit, walked around, talked to folks, helped identify pests. Again, another one of these, spending time in somebody else's garden, supporting them and teaching them. And at night, more work, computer work. This time of the year, I do a lot of computer work kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That computer work in the off season, when it's winter time, I work fewer hours. I work about 20 hours, so a part-time job. And I'm planning for the season, doing reports, organizing files. Some of my professional development happens during that time. I attend workshops, but a lot of organizing and creating resources that then I use during the summer. But yeah, computer work for 5 months.
Yeah, it sounds right. Like a lot of equal parts, kind of being in touch and organizing and making to-do lists, sending emails, and being in the soil and kind of making it happen. And both are so valuable. Do you have a favorite part? Is there, I know you said working in the family room with kind of mixed ages and being able to be in the soil. Do you have a favorite, or do you?
I would say just the diversity of people that I get to interact with, because we are a nonprofit. Even in Vermont, where there isn't so much diversity, I feel as though I work with kind of every age range, people of different cultures, people of different backgrounds, in different settings, in homes, in schools, in community spaces. And I think that for me, it keeps it exciting. My workplace, where I go for my activities, changes continually. And I think that dynamic energy is really important to me. I'm not one to go to an office 9 to 5 in one location. That's not my personality.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like if someone were interested in getting involved with some sort of agriculture education or environmental education, that would be something that they would have the opportunity to do, is to kind of be all over the place, meet a lot of people, especially if it's really hands-on education. You're not necessarily sitting in a classroom. The world is your classroom, right? Nature is your classroom. So yeah, it's great to hear about. Let's see. I'm wondering if you could let us into maybe what are some of the challenges of working in an agricultural field, and I think I'll add, like, particularly in Vermont. So although you're not necessarily, your work doesn't depend on kind of one farm and the produce from one farm, a lot of your work still does depend on kind of things coming up from the ground, and things growing. So I'm wondering if there are any challenges of that, either in Vermont or just kind of generally that you face.
I think one challenge is, we were speaking about it a little bit, the seasonality. It's challenging to have to, or to feel like I have to cram everything into one season. And if something doesn't work, whether it was the way I structured my lessons, or the hours that I chose to have programming at housing sites, or whether it was a year full of pests and diseases and really rainy weather, I can't change course very easily. It's like the whole season passes and whatever didn't work, and I have to wait a whole year until I can change my plan and try something new. And so that's challenging. So it definitely requires me to be on my feet. If I see something not going well, I have to act fast, change things, find a way to manage the pests, or change the schedule, or give more support to an intern, because I feel like the ticking clock is constantly on my mind. Like, there's pressure to get a lot done in a short season.
Right. And you can't just be going off of the same exact kind of day-to-day plan every summer. It sounds like looks different, and I'm
every summer is different.
That
because I'm working with the natural elements. Like, you don't know, there could be a drought, there could be a flood, and you have to be resilient in that way to deal with what comes.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure that that's something that really anyone working right in the field that's heavily tied to natural elements would sort of face. Yeah, that's really fascinating, and definitely unique to this field. So we can kind of start to wrap up, but I'm wondering if you have any advice for someone who's interested in pursuing a career in agriculture, natural resources, or environmental education that kind of you've learned or you would want to pass on based on your experience?
I would say something that's been very meaningful for me is being able to see how different people do this work. Like, what do different farms look like? I've always been interested in the organic agriculture world, but seeing how a conventional farm works is very important. I feel like it informs, well, what is your style? What are your beliefs? In this whole world of natural resources agriculture, what are you most interested in? You mentioned my interest in herbalism, and that's been something that I'd also say another example of, like, I had to explore a little bit and see, like, am I interested in that? Am I not? So I think taking these opportunities, I also find it's a field that welcomes like volunteer work or apprentice work or kind of work trades to get a feeling for this type of work. I don't feel as though there's many fields that do that. They kind of take on people to see what it's like. And then you can, from there, decide, like, is it for you or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I even think I get my vegetables weekly from a farm, and in our email last week, they just invited people to walk around the farm and go see some of the baby animals. And so, right, ways like that too. And I think especially kind of in Vermont being such an agricultural hub, there are opportunities to go, right, explore it just kind of with your eyes and with your own feet and just kind of walk around. So yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I think as someone who spent a little bit of time in agriculture, that I definitely resonates with me. So is there anything else that you want to share? Anything I haven't asked about? Anything that you would want to say to someone in this field, or anything else?
I think something that comes to mind is just, I think back to how many times in my life I've had to create something because nobody else was doing it. And I think that it's possible in any field, but I think it's something that has particularly worked well for me in this field. If nobody else is teaching classes on a certain composting technique, then I would go ahead and teach it. When nobody was gardening on rooftops in Mexico City, then I went ahead and planned something around it. So I think like that like entrepreneurial spirit can still happen in a field, an unconventional field like agriculture and natural resources. Not everything has been invented. There's not people doing everything that you would like to learn, but there's a welcoming, warm community and a lot of people interested and a huge need for this type of work. I think it's only going to increase as the years and climate change and world situation continues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. And right, and like starting your own farm, or trying out a new fertilizer, and then if it works, can you sell it? Things like that. That's so cool. Yeah, right. And can kind of dip into, are you really interested in soils or pest management or herbalism? There's so much there and so much to learn. Well, thank you so much, Carolina, for taking the time to chat with us, even during the most busiest season. I'm glad we could catch you during that computer work chunk. And yeah, we're really grateful to have heard a little bit about your story and give some folks a peek into kind of a sector of agriculture and natural resources that I think is a little bit less common, and a perspective that maybe is known a little bit less.
I'll just put it out there, if anybody's in the Burlington area and wants to volunteer and follow me around and participate in activities, we welcome folks to do that.
And I would heavily encourage folks to do that as someone who has learned a lot from Carolina. So I'm going to, before we officially say goodbye, I'm going to bring up some discussion questions. If you are watching this with a class, here are some things that you can discuss with your peers or your teachers. Again, thank you for tuning in to Virtual Tech at Work, and thank you, Carolina, for calling in.
Of course, it was my pleasure.